Good afternoon, and this afternoon we have Irawo with us. Teo is a food safety trainer and auditor. Good afternoon, Teo. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Great. Good to meet you, and thanks for your time. So, first of all, tell us a bit about your current situation, your background, your job. What is it you do? Because I know you're involved in a few different job roles at the minute. So,
hmm
so what are those jobs, and what do you do?
Okay, yeah, so as you quite rightly said, there's a number of things that I do. I would say the main thing I do really is training. So I'm a principal trainer for the BRC food standard. So I'm involved currently in a lot of training on the conversion from issue 8 to issue 9. I also am an associate tutor at Cardiff Metropolitan University, where I teach the global quality management systems. And I also teach some general food safety courses, HACCP, etc. I am also still involved in some auditing and also some consultancy work for the food industry, in addition to current role also as a researcher of food safety culture at Cardiff Metropolitan University. So
Okay,
that's
so
kind of a potty, yeah, of
you've
what I'm doing.
you've got a lot going on.
Yeah, yes.
So BRC, so do you want to just tell us a bit about who the BRC are and kind of what their remit is?
Well, so I mean, it's they're now it's brand reputation through compliance, global standards. So I think most listeners would probably remember it as formerly BRC, but now it's a brand reputation through compliance, a global food safety standard, and it's a standard that there are a number of certificated sites all over the globe, essentially. And I would say it is the main standard out there for food safety that is adopted globally by manufacturers who essentially manufacture, could be raw materials or sort of food products, branded, unbranded, and export it all over the world. And it's a GFSI benchmark standard, so that's the Global Food Safety Initiative. And as part of that benchmarking process, it undergoes revision and updates every, say, 3 to 4 years. So we're now going from issue 8 to issue 9. So there's a lot of training going on at the moment of auditors, trainers, and also sites wanting to know what those changes are, so they can be ready for their audits in come February, when the first audits would take place.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. So you've got quite a varied and diverse background. Looking at your LinkedIn profile, you've come from a sort of food production, food manufacturing background, if that's fair to say. Do you want to just talk us through about how you got into the food industry and kind of where you started?
Yes, so yes, I did a food science degree actually at South Bank University, London. And I'd say my first sort of technical role was as a food technologist for Marks and Spencer. So I started off as a retail technologist, and then I went into manufacturing. So I've been worked as a technical manager, and it was after that really that I then started, well, say sort of freelancing. And as it goes with these things, you retrain, you add skills. So I then did what used to be known as the third-party auditor course. Then it was BRC, got to work with a certification body. Then traveling all over, auditing food factories, and then the training came on after that. And then it's kind of developed really to what I'm doing now, and then obviously went back into academia to do research.
Yeah. So it's a very different transition from
Yeah.
manufacturing, auditing into academia, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what were some of the challenges you can remember from manufacturing and auditing? I know you're still doing some of it now, but thinking back to the days where you're doing it full time, what were some of the challenges and some of the things that you had to kind of overcome as part of an audit in manufacturing?
Well, so there's a lot of travel. involved in auditing, you are often away for, you know, what can be 2 to 3 days, and it's quite a big responsibility, you know, as an auditor, to ensure that you know, you are auditing to the standard, and that you're fair, but also that you're robust in what you're doing, and that you're consistent. And it's worth remembering also that the outcome of the audit obviously means, you know, different things to the company as well that's been audited, who are often obviously relying on, you know, passing their audit, to continue to supply. So yeah, so it's quite a big responsibility on you as an auditor, just to make sure that you're fair, but also that you are maintaining the quality and consistency of that audit, obviously for the reputation of the scheme. So invariably, obviously, you know, you come across different standards and different cultures and things like that, but it always comes back to really, you know, what the standard requirements, and do you see objective evidence of compliance to the standard.
Fantastic. Okay. So I'm just interested to find out a bit more about doing an audit. I think most of the audits you do are for an accreditation, like BRC, is that right?
Oh, no, actually, at the moment, I'm not doing certification audits. So a lot of the audits I'll be doing, that I do these days, would be for people preparing for their audits. So some may refer to them as pre-audits or pre-assessments, or in a consultancy role, identifying where the gaps are, you know, in their systems and things like that.
So
but essentially it will be a full audit, but then in my role, I will be able to obviously offer some assistance or you know, some recommendations with regards to maybe some of those deficiencies that I see. And that is really different to doing certification audits, where you know, there's a fine line. You cannot be a consultant, you cannot coach, you cannot recommend. It's essentially, you know, this is a non-conformity or not. What's the, you know, what's the severity, and you know, and it ends at that, really. So there's really difference.
So it's preparation, consultancy, readiness for the standards.
Yes, readiness for their actual audits. And also sometimes assist some clients with supplier doing the audit, you know, with their supplier audits as well, because that often can be quite a challenge, trying to you know, get them all done.
Okay, so thinking about when you are going to do an audit, do you want to just talk us through how exactly do you do an audit? What do you prepare in advance? What sort of ways of working? Is it peer-based? Do you have a form that you use? Do you use any software? And what sort of things are you looking for when you're doing an audit?
Okay, so yeah, so again, depends on the scope of the audit. But if I was to, so if I use, say, a pre-assessment as an example, say against the BRC GS standard, then the standard itself is a checklist. But in terms of the approach to it, so I don't use any software, so it is quite paper-based. But then it's a process-led audit, so where you are following through all the processes, say from goods in to the dispatch. But at every step, again, we're looking at all those key elements of a process. So, you know, the people involved. So you're gathering information about them, you know, what they're doing, that you're observing what they're doing, you're interviewing, you're talking to them about what they're doing. You're also looking at the information connected with that, as appropriate, again, materials, how it's handled, etc. The environment as well, in terms of cleanliness, pest control, you know, the light fabrication, those sorts of things, equipment. So it's pretty much it's very much a process-led approach to the audit, but you are gathering objective evidence of compliance to the standard as you are going along, or whatever the scope of your audit is. So if the standard says there shall be something in place, a particular procedure in place, then is that procedure in place? But also the contents of the procedure, is it adequate? And sometimes the standard is quite prescriptive about at least some of the things that must be mentioned or detailed in the procedure, and then you're checking to see if that is the case. Are people trained and competent to do what they're doing? Is the equipment fit for purpose? Is it maintained, calibrated? The information that's in use, is it clear? People been trained on those work instructions, etc. The materials, again, do we have specifications for those? And it's essentially just all through. So there's quite a lot, but also you're verifying again that they are, that the procedures are happening in accordance really with what they've said. But also you do have to establish whether what they say they're doing also, is that compliant? As well. So there's various things that but it is pretty much paper-based. And then there's the usual sort of obviously letting them what the outcome of that is in terms of compliance or not. And then it depends on what the client wants, whether the client wants you to offer to say, well, these are just all the non-conformities, or in an audit, well, this would be minor or would it be major? So again, sometimes they want in that level of detail. Sometimes it's just, look, what do we need to do, or what is, where are the gaps in the systems, etc. But also even with regards to people making that assessment, there's the people knowledge, the training, maybe what areas that they need to focus on, maybe how they're training people as well. Could be something that is relevant as part of that, especially if you maybe notice that maybe the knowledge isn't quite there, or the quality of the answers that you're getting, there's quite a few gaps. So it could then lead you to kind of look into, well, how are people being trained? What information is being given to people? So it will very much depend again on what that scope is. And then how far does the clients actually want you to go with regards to that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, definitely, but quite rewarding, because the rewarding thing is when they do take those findings on board and then implement their corrective actions, and and implement and they pass the audit and they pass very well, then that's quite the rewarding part really of what I do.
Yeah. And I guess obviously you can spot any errors, anything they need to improve on before they get their actual formal inspections. Then you can obviously guide them for improvement actions as well.
Yeah, if that's something that they've asked for, then yes. But the general idea is that they should correct those, do corrective actions. If they want my inputs for that as well, then I would obviously offer them that as well. And then hopefully, they're ready really for their audit.
Yeah, perfect. So how long is a piece of string, I guess? How long does it take to do an average audit, if there is such a thing? Does it depend on the size of the business and what's involved, or is it hours and hours?
Well, it does depend on the scope, and also so if it could take 2 days, it could take a day. So it really depends on the scope. So sometimes if you're just looking at just systems, so it's all the records, documentation, procedure, the system part of it, that could quite easily take you a whole day to do that. But if they also want the good manufacturing practices also looked at, where you're then going through and doing detailed inspections, so that again could take quite a number of hours. So it could quite easily, I'd say about a day and a half too. Or it could just be a day, but that is pretty much dependent on the scope and how much detail that they want you to go into
so
on
a lot
that.
of
But
time.
yeah, it's a lot of time. But I'd say on average though tends to be a day, because the scope tends to be quite clearly defined, as in sometimes we want to look at HACCP and XYZ, and that helps actually when the client is very clear as to exactly what they need, what they want. So we want these areas looked at, and then you can focus on those. And I'd say generally speaking, it would be stuff you could maybe do in a day.
And do you find, Theo, after you've done the inspection, you've got a lot of sort of post-admin work to do, a lot of typing up, report writing, and kind of collating of notes after you've been there and done the audit?
Well, in the past, yes. But these days, I'll be very honest with you, because of the lack of time on my part, the deal generally is you take the notes as I'm going along. I'll be honest with you, I really just don't have the time writing up detailed reports.
Okay.
So generally the deal generally is come round, you take all the notes. I'd leave a summary in terms of the main findings so they're clear, but I don't do detailed reports these days, only because I really just don't have the time to do that. But the clients are usually quite happy to make, to do their own make the note. So take
So
their
is it
own notes.
literally just a handwritten form with notes on that you do as you're going around?
Yeah, so as I'm
do
going
you have
on,
an iPad typing up? Yeah.
No, I don't. Well, I don't. So I would have, I would take notes, obviously, as I'm going along in terms of what, those issues are, etc. And also, obviously, notes to them further investigate or follow up, and that. And then I would generally leave an overview of the main findings, so that they've got some clear action points. To go so but no, I don't have any, as I say, I don't have any gadgets that help me do that. It's generally just handwritten notes.
Wow. Okay. Brilliant. So that's been really insightful, giving us some idea about kind of manufacturing and your background in doing audits. So let's just think about and talk about kind of what you're doing now in academia.
So I'm a researcher in Cardiff Metropolitan University. And also then an associate tutor there as well. So because there are two universities in Cardiff, so there's Cardiff University and there's Cardiff Metropolitan University, and I'm in the Metropolitan University.
Right. So what's your role there? What exactly are you doing?
Yeah, so my research interest is food safety culture, but I'm looking at the my area that I'm looking at is really the catering food service sector. Now, when we talked about the auditing side, there's actually going back a few years when I started freelancing. One of the jobs I actually did was actually auditing in food service, so catering. So like the restaurants, hotels and chains and things like that. So I would say that kind of is really a bit of the link, and then choosing to look at that in my research rather than necessarily say manufacturing, which is really the background. So I would so that is the link to that, and could quite clearly see that there's obviously quite a huge difference in both industries when you look at the manufacturing industry and then food service catering industry. There's quite a big difference really in the the organization, what they do, how things are necessarily kind of regulated, and all those sorts of things. So that's really kind of the link there.
Do you find the manufacturing industry to be more organized and proactive, paperwork systems in place compared to the catering industry? How do the two kind of compare?
So one of the first things I noticed, obviously, is that obviously with manufacturing, yes, they tend to be more structured. systems, the documentation. But I believe a lot of that also is to do with the certification schemes and that we do have in place, such as, say, the BRCGS standard, but also there's the retailer standards, their own technical codes of practices. There's all those things that essentially have an influence. So those are all external factors that influence what goes on in manufacturing. Whereas in catering, again, it's so diverse. You go from a food van, a fast food truck, or a van, or a little sort of pop-ups, in the middle of town, to your independent cafes, etc., to then your chains, who then have their own central systems as well, and there's a huge difference there. So the central organization would obviously have an impact as what's going on at the individual sites.
Sure.
And you'll find that they tend to be structured slightly differently, again, to, say, all the independents, where really the sort of what they get is an environmental health officer visit, once every 3 years or once every 2 years, or depending on what the risk assessment is. So again, there was such a huge diversity, but my experience is that it's not as structured. It's a bit more flexible, and it really, they could structure it however they want. The requirements in terms of record keeping, again, I believe it can be quite minimal. They can have safer food, better business and keep diaries. But you go into a food manufacturer who's got any retailer as a customer, or they've got things that they will have a proper food safety management system based on codex principles. It will be written differently. They'll have all these different procedures. So I think so you go from very highly structured, and when I mean regulated, I'm not necessarily thinking, not necessarily just the legal stuff, but all the external factors that mean that a manufacturer would have a certain structure in place to actually, where very minimal external influences on food service, really, unless of course they belong to a chain where they have their own due diligence systems and they have their own central units and things like that. So there's a huge divide between the two.
Sure. Yeah. So what are sort of the common themes that you see in catering hospitality? What sort of things do they fall down on and you pick up on?
Well, it's more, I would say, that in all the time that I was kind of involved in doing the inspections and going in and all those sorts of things, is that I'd say that actually some of the issues are not too dissimilar to some in manufacturing. So cleanliness issues, in terms of the standards of cleaning, but also the record keeping can be quite challenging. In terms of just the level of completion, or in not completing it when it should do. As I say, more kind of cleanliness, the equipment, all those sorts of things. And I think I kind of got the sense that obviously it's against the backdrop of, obviously, these things cost money, the things that need resources, such as the sort of standards of the equipment there, actually having enough staff to actually do not just the cooking and everything and the service, but also the same staff are relied upon to do the cleaning and the time actually for that. So I'd say hygiene standards in terms of the cleanliness and things like that, damage and things like to equipment. Sort of cross contamination issues. So sort of not maybe separating things as they that they should, as they should. Actually take monitoring. So monitoring temperatures, say, or say cooked items, or those sorts of things. So those were fairly sort of common things that that I would tend to see.
Okay. And I guess allergens is a big topic at the minute.
Well,
What's your opinion on that? And what sort of things do you think regarding allergens and allergies?
again, with what's been my experience, that there seems to be quite an awareness of allergens. Now, in terms of how the different places then, what should I say, comply, or the systems that then that's so variable. It varies from just ask us if you've got an allergy to people obviously putting allergen information out there. There seemed to be quite an awareness, but then I found out that, okay, my local area, for example, the local authority, the environmental health officers, has done quite a lot of work actually talking to them about allergens during the routine visits, and there's been a lot of information that's been passed to that. Does that make sense? So because I found that there seemed to be quite a high level of awareness of what the what the issues are, but then again the systems that they have in place are then really vary.
Yeah,
And
sure.
then, of course, we've had the advent of Natasha's law, which is obviously, again, bringing things to the forefront. But I still think that is still, I think that is a challenge for the whole industry, I would say, not just in food service or catering, even in manufacturing. The management of allergens can be quite, quite problematic. For them to do, but then they have frameworks that they can follow. There's requirement of the BRCGS standard, for example, on allergen management and doing your risk assessments and those, and then putting all your controls in place. I have not seen any evidence or anyone talking about risk assessments in catering, for example, or food service. Does that, what I mean, like in terms of that, or identifying routes of cross contamination, and then putting these systems in place. No, I think that the awareness is, we do need to tell people what's in it, or know what's in it if people ask us. And yeah, we do try and separate things. But again, the standards again are quite different. But I think it's quite problematic for both. It's an ongoing challenge.
And I guess, like you say, from my experience, there's so many places that are aware of it. They have come and ask, or a matrix with what's in the foods.
Yeah.
But I guess knowing what's in the food and then actually preparing the food safely are two very different things, because you've got cross-contamination, you've got the supply chain, the supplier changes the recipes, keeping that to date. It's a massive undertaking, isn't it? So it just takes one little mistake, I guess. If the ingredients change, or they don't clean the surfaces, or they use the wrong chopping board or knife or pan or equipment, leading to cross-contamination. So they're going to be so careful, haven't they, when doing sort of allergenic meals.
Yeah, definitely. But I suppose there's still the sort of old attitudes also of sometimes people thinking that it's just all a lot of red tape as well. So I suppose you're battling against those sorts of attitudes as well. Like, I'm sure you've heard it in your time about food safety gone mad, or that sort of stuff, which we're still,
In my day, we didn't have those sort of things.
Yeah, exactly. In my day, this happened. In my day, so
great. Okay, well, let's move on, and then just think about what is it you're up to at the minute. So I gather you are doing some research as part of your studies at the university. So do you want to tell us a bit about the study and the research that you're doing?
Yes. So as I mentioned earlier, so I'm looking at food safety culture of small sort of catering establishments or food service industry. It's a number of things really in terms of establishing, how can we measure it, and then how again sort of in terms of improving it, so we're getting a positive. So the thing at the moment is that there's training. There's a lot of information about we all know, we know mostly the statistics on the people are hospitalized every year. Over 6 million people suffer with foodborne diseases, etc. We know all of that, but yet there's still this kind of gap in terms of what people should be doing, what they do. And the thinking is somewhere in the middle is that where food safety culture sits, about the attitudes people have, their beliefs and things like that. And what we want, obviously, from a food safety point of view, is to have for people to have these sort of positive food hygiene behaviors, you know, so they've had the training, but they put that training actually and then do exactly what's expected, etc. So, but also there's a number of things. So the study that I have been doing, so is sort of quite a few components to it. So there's compliance data. So I've looked at kind of the compliance data, so results of the food hygiene rating scheme in some local authorities in terms of what sort of the general non-compliances are. Looked at also done some qualitative interviews with some businesses, looking at those factors that influence not just food safety compliance, but culture. And then moving on from that is then a survey at the moment, which I've got an online survey, which is which is out there, which is looking at those factors that influence, again, compliance and food safety culture, and trying to tease out those sort of, you know, the attitudes and perceptions of food catering managers, really, towards those factors that influence food safety compliance and culture.
Yeah.
And the idea then is that from the next stage on is then looking at some case studies to study in depth in terms of then using a sector specific tool. So the one thing that I'm trying to achieve in this study is acknowledging that the food service and catering sector is different, is quite unique, and that so a sector specific tool to then be able to assess, and then I suppose at the end of it really is then being able to recommend interventions, you know, to help improve food safety culture in those types of businesses. Okay. So that's kind of like just a potted kind of summary of it all.
Mm-hmm. So what sort of businesses are you looking to engage with and respond to your survey, Tia?
Well, so I'm looking at everything from a very micro. I'm looking for micro, small, medium-sized catering businesses. So it could be fast food, cafes, restaurants. It's just a diverse variety of businesses. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested in either the catering managers, or sometimes it's if the head chef. So who really is quite responsible. You know, so it could be an appointed manager, could be the owner, manager, or head chef.
Yeah.
So essentially that's what I'm looking for.
And these are businesses just in England, is that right?
So I think the study has concentrated obviously mostly in England. Mm-hmm. In England, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've got the survey out now. And
the survey, yeah. So the survey is out now, and it's going to stay open for another month. And it's out now, and it will be open for another month. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So if we get the link off you, we'll include that with the video.
Yeah.
Share that on our social media, and obviously we can tag you in as well. And then obviously, what's the best way for people to contact you if they've got any queries or want to get in touch with you? What's the best way to contact you?
I think for the now the link itself is anonymous. So if people actually did want to contact me, then they could obviously do it for yourself or through my LinkedIn profile. They can in the first instance. and then we can take it from there. But I've kind of made the links anonymous to try and increase, obviously, the chances of people completing it, being honest, because that's obviously quite important in terms of the findings. So that, so it's not going to gather any information at all about the respondents.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Theo, thanks very much for your time. It's been
Thank
really
you.
interesting and insightful, and good luck with the study. Wish you the best with it
Thank
all.
you.
And,
Thank you.
Great to meet you.
And you too. Thank you very much. Thank you.